So Kelly, welcome back. Good to have you here.
So much. Thank you for having me.
It is great. And you're calling all the way in from LA, right?
hmm All the way in from my home studio here.
Home studio. And it is great. And now you're also doing therapy, right?
Yes. So I have a
And
private practice and I also facilitate drug and alcohol rehab groups.
I'm not sure. Did I know that part?
I'm not sure.
I don't think I knew that. So tell me about the drug and alcohol rehab groups.
So it's all via Zoom now as well. But yeah, I facilitate a process group, a writing group for those struggling with addictions. And also recently an anger management group as well for teens. So kind of throwing in everything. Why not?
That's so great. So what are you finding with online therapy? Any difference?
I find it harder for me personally. I miss the energy. I miss that one-on-one. I mean, it's the next best thing. I'm so grateful that we can at least conduct it this way. But I do miss, there's something about the presence of being with somebody else. And also, you miss a lot of that nonverbal communication via Zoom, in my opinion. So I kind of feel like I have to work a little bit harder to kind of gauge how they're doing.
Mm.
Do you feel the same? I mean, do you find it harder as well?
Um, it's a really interesting experience, in part because I love doing TV work. So in some ways, it's sort of bringing a lot of this stuff all together. I think for some folks, it was initially a challenge, but now they realize just how convenient it is.
Yeah.
The convenience of it. I mean, the demand we were placing on patients to come into the office and sit there and tell us what was going on. I've been doing telepsychiatry for a long time. Actually, was one of the people who was trying to get it going because it is a unique experience for the therapist to actually be in someone's home in that way, where they get to show me instead of just telling me.
Mm.
So I think it's great. And then for some of my folks, I think we were talking about this before. So I work with some folks who have profound developmental challenges. And this was interesting for them because some of them, it was like, one of them said, is that you in there, Dr. Schrand? Trying to figure out, what was going on. Another one was so freaked out. It took a couple of sessions for him to sort of get used to it. But some of them they just smile the whole time because they're on television. And they just love they're just so animated. So, it's really interesting for a lot of different people. But in general, I must admit, I think that telepsychiatry and telehealth in general allows us to reach people who were so geographically isolated that they didn't have access. It was a real barrier to not have access, and now they do. So, I mean, theoretically, you could be treating folks here in Massachusetts, Kelly.
Right. I agree with you on that point. But I also feel, on the other hand, too, is that I think it forced people to get out a little bit. And I worry that sometimes it's keeping people closed in a little bit, too. So I can see both sides.
Yeah, that's a good point. With the substance use folks, are you finding increased rates of relapse or?
Absolutely. I think wine sales went up 800%. They said.
Wow.
So absolutely, for sure. People are bored. They don't feel purposeful. It's just so hard. And then they're missing their outlets that they used to be able to do, even AA meetings and things, I mean, it's just different via Zoom. So I think that plays a big part.
Yeah. Yep. I would like to think that America recognizes, though, that the mental health and substance use issues are not these weird things. But how many people out there who are listening right now are feeling a little more isolated, a little sad, maybe a little anxious, maybe a little angry? That's part of who we are as human beings. But there's a spectrum. Everybody gets sad, not everybody gets depressed. But just because you're depressed doesn't mean that there's something wrong. That's what the whole I am approach is about, is to say there is no sickness, there's no pathology. We're just doing the best we can at every moment in time with the potential to change. And that includes attention deficit, not attention deficit disorder, because as soon as we use the word disorder, we separate people into groups. But attention deficit, we all get distracted. Some kids get distracted more than others. So with that in mind, mm-hmm. Tell us first a little bit about your book. How's your book doing? Tell folks about what the book is, where they can get it, and then we'll.
Oh, thank you. Sure. It's called Thriving with ADHD, and it's a workbook for kids 7 to 12. And it's doing pretty well. I'm happy. I think also it provides a program for kids right now who need homeschooling as well, and then different organizational techniques that help parents. But yeah, I mean, the reason that I really am happy to write it is that I want these kids to feel empowered, and kind of what you were saying. I don't want them to feel like they have a deficit, but rather that they're passionate, they're excitable, and there's just different ways you can reframe it. There's nothing wrong with them. It's just they're wired a little bit differently. And so here's how to get around it. And I might have said this on your show last time, but I mean, the best way that I describe it is that I'm directionally challenged. I'm horrible. I'm like an infant. All I know is turn right 100 feet. Like that's all I know. And so I have to take pictures of my parking spots. And I always say, and so I've just learned to adapt, that when I go into a parking lot, I'm like, okay, remember where I parked, take a picture. And it's the same thing with kids who struggle with ADHD. It's like, okay, my older son said to me one time, Mom, I have to set a timer in the shower because I know that I will go way over. So he's just learned, okay, I need that reminder that after 10 minutes, oh, okay, there's that beep that reminds me it's time to get out. So you learn the skills to adapt.
And that's great. And that's a small change. It can have a big effect. So that's brilliant. So how do you think he came up with that?
That he came up on his own. I was actually impressed. I think he realized after maybe 40 minutes when he's turning into a prune, he's like, all right, this isn't working so well. But no, I mean, I've always been really open. Both my boys have ADHD. So I've always been really open about there's nothing wrong. We just need to figure out ways for this to work. And so I think they just learned over time, okay, I need to figure out strategies.
And very often it runs in families. So any relatives who also remind
It's really funny because I'm wondering if I have it, it's possible. But I think there is definitely in the bloodline. My dad might be listening now, but I think there might be a little bit of, he's constantly losing his keys. If you saw his desk at work, it is a sign of intelligence, as he may say, but everything's everywhere. But I really believe that people with ADHD are extremely bright. And it doesn't, just very bright and passionate and creative, just a lot of amazing thoughts. So, but yeah, I do think there is some genetic components there.
Yeah, but I agree with you. Some of the brightest kids that I've met have ADD. And I mean, honestly, some of my family members have ADD as well.
Stretch the kindness, rush with madness, is it sadness or just a show?